We are just a developing country, not a developed country. There are still tens of millions of people who have not escaped poverty. With such a heavy burden, why do we support Africa with so much 60 billion yuan? The money is left to help the people who have not escaped poverty, or build more is some hope elementary bad. In my impression, this kind of statement will pop up from time to time, especially when some domestic situation requires money. Did it really cost so much to support Africa? Spending so much money, are we really in a loss-making business? Before we start, let me talk about a technical issue. I don't know if you have discovered that the unit of 60 billion to support Africa is the US dollar. Why use US dollars as the unit? Because the money used by the country for foreign investment is through foreign exchange and other means of international payments. This money cannot be brought into the country for use. Even if it is used, it needs to be exchanged with the corresponding RMB from the domestic market. Otherwise, with the huge foreign exchange reserves of the People's Republic of China, directly using them domestically can only lead to one consequence: inflation. Let's talk about this today. How should I put it? When it comes to economics, sometimes it really can't be simply measured by how much money you spent and whether you got it back. 1. Japan's compensation boom. Not to mention construction aid. In this world, sometimes even war compensation can be used to make money. Have you heard of it? It even gave birth to a term in economics called compensation boom. This is to say that after the signing of the San Francisco Peace Treaty, Japan ended the period of occupation politically, and its economy began to get rid of the direct control of the United States and return to a state of liberalization. At the same time, due to the outbreak of the Korean War, Japan, which was closest to the battlefield, became the nearest military logistics base of the US military was destroyed, and a large number of orders for military supplies made the Japanese economy recover rapidly to the point where it was necessary to open up overseas markets. The first target of Japanese companies is the Southeast Asian market. However, it was only a few years after the end of World War II, and the various atrocities committed by Japan during World War II have not been forgotten by the Southeast Asian people. There is a general anti-Japanese and anti-Japanese sentiment, which makes it impossible for Japanese products to enter these countries. Japan's small bean tanks swept across Southeast Asia. How did Japan solve it? The answer must be beyond everyone's expectations: relying on war compensation. At that time, the national sentiment in Southeast Asian countries was high, and the business activities of Japanese companies could not go on at all. However, although companies cannot enter, as a defeated country in World War II, Japan needs to pay war compensation to Southeast Asian countries, and with peace of mind, the shrewd Japanese firmly seized this opportunity. The war compensation that should have been paid in money was suddenly replaced with Japanese technical labor services and other products. Anyway, when these countries have money, they need to buy things and technology, and there is no difference between giving money and giving labor and technology. For example, the $200 million in war compensation to Myanmar was replaced by the provision of transportation equipment to Myanmar, including buses, cars, railway vehicles, and other energy facilities, such as the Baru River hydropower station in Yangon, the capital of Myanmar, etc. Technical personnel and complete sets of equipment are provided by Japan. The success of the Myanmar model has had a radiation effect. In 1956, the Philippine government and Japan reached a war compensation agreement using the same method. The war compensation of up to $500 million was replaced by goods and technical services, and the cash compensation was only $20 million. The same is true for Indonesia's reparations afterwards. The compensation of $400 million was replaced by goods, technology, and the cancellation of previous trade debts. After that, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Singapore all adopted the same alternative compensation method. Almost from 1955, the same year when Japan began war compensation, the Japanese economy entered a period of rapid growth. The compensation not only did not increase Japan's economic burden, but promoted the overseas market expansion of Japan's machinery manufacturing, chemical industry, and electromechanical products. Just imagine, a large number of public equipment in Southeast Asian countries are provided by Japan, which is a different standard from the United States and other Western countries. Not to mention anything else, let's talk about voltage. There are American type, 110V 130V, and European type, 220V 240V, in the world, but the Japanese type is lower than all types, 110 volts. If you use the electricity supplied by the Japanese power plant, you have to match it with electrical products from Japan, otherwise you won't be able to carry it at all. In the future, Japanese technicians will naturally be needed for maintenance. If it is necessary to replace it, the most convenient replacement must be a Japanese product. The innocent Southeast Asian countries were easily infiltrated by Japanese companies. To this day, Southeast Asia is still an important dumping ground for Japanese goods. The influence of Japanese standards has not been completely eliminated. One can imagine the power of war compensation. So, have you seen it? In matters of economics, sometimes it is the same as the old saying, a loss is an advantage, and it is really not easy to see through it at a glance, or to explain it clearly in one or two sentences. 2. What is the essence of aid construction? In fact, most Chinese people misunderstand one thing, which is the nature of foreign aid. What is the nature of foreign aid? Foreign aid is an important part of the foreign policy of the donor country, and it is only natural to reflect the self-interest of the country. This sentence of the master of realism, Hans Morgenthau, is considered to be the identification of the nature of foreign aid by the School of Realism in International Relations. And that's more or less the case. Foreign aid is not free donations, or making money at a loss. The reason why it is called aid is more because it sounds nice. For example, on October 25, 1971, the two Arab proposal was adopted by 23 countries including Algeria and Albania at the 1976th plenary meeting of the 26th session of the United Nations General Assembly with an overwhelming majority of 76 votes in favor, 35 votes against and 17 abstentions. Proposal. China resumes UN permanent member voting, green means yes, red means no, blue abstains. Proposal content. Restore all legal rights of the People's Republic of China in the United Nations, and expel the representatives of the Chiang Kai-shek clique from the United Nations agencies. Among them, Europe ranks first with a high support rate of 3.9%, and Africa has the most votes in favor with 26 votes in favor. Not everyone can take the permanent seat, and no amount of money can buy it. Why did Africa get so many yes votes? Isn't it because of the various aids that China has provided to Africa since the 1950s and 1960s? According to statistics, over the past 50 years, China has aided nearly 900 economic and social development projects in Africa, sent more than 15,000 angels in white to 47 African countries to save lives and heal the wounded on the African continent, government scholarship. More than 3,000 Chinese officers and soldiers went to Africa to carry out UN peacekeeping missions and became the guardian envoys of African peace. Of course, China's aid to Africa is not only about political benefits. In terms of economics, whether it is official or non-governmental, the frequency of using the word construction aid is higher than that of aid. Assistance. Aid. Please understand the difference between these two words carefully. Here lies the mystery. Most of the funds for China's aid to African projects come from China's double excellent loans to Africa. Excellent loan, China's foreign aid preferential loan, is a medium and long-term low-interest loan of the nature of assistance provided by China to developing countries. It is mainly used for economically friendly and sustainable production projects in the cooperation between Chinese and foreign enterprises. Features: low loan interest rate, long-term, 100% financing, fund type, RMB. Loan funds are directly imported into the account of the importer and exporter, and the funds do not go abroad. Yabai, preferential buyer's credit, which is a sovereign-level government loan based on the government's reputation, which is used by the other government or enterprises to purchase Chinese equipment and services. Features: check whether the country where you are located has a preferential purchase quota jointly formulated by the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Ministry of Finance. YUMI needs the lender to provide an advance payment of 15% of the business contract amount, and the type of fund is US dollars. See, these two loan models, the former one is for RMB, and the funds do not go abroad. Although they are free to use, basically, they can only be used to buy domestic things. It is basically impossible to transfer funds to buy something else. While doing business, I also sold RMB, by the way. As for the latter, the capital is not limited to RMB, but it is limited to the purchase of Chinese equipment and services. It is of course very good to buy in RMB, but if you use US dollars, it will help China increase its foreign exchange reserves, and it will not lose at all. After such a circle, basically 60% of the construction aid funds flowed back to the country and were replaced by various equipment, products, and technical assistance produced in China. As for the repayment of loans, the former is mainly guaranteed by investment projects, such as railways, mines, oil wells, and other projects. The latter is mostly guaranteed by the oil, minerals, and other resources of African countries. Anyway, it's definitely not a loss. Not only that, when the infrastructure is completed, railways and roads are opened, mines and oil fields are developed, large and small factories are put into operation, Chinese companies can organize groups to go, daily necessities, home appliances, mobile phones and even computers, etc. Africa is on sale. According to statistics, the trade volume between China and Africa has soared dozens of times in the past 10 years, reaching $220 billion per year. China has been Africa's largest trading partner for 6 consecutive years, leaving the United States and Japan far behind. Later. This is the fruition of our decades-long efforts. It is no wonder that the United States and Japan will say sourly that China will colonize Africa. 3. Conclusion. We are certainly not colonizing. China is different from Western developed countries. It has suffered from colonization and knows the pain of being colonized. Do not do to others what you do not want. Therefore, we are sincere in aiding construction, and of course, we are also sincere in making money. In fact, the two are not contradictory at all, because economic development and social progress require money. China used to have no money, so it carried out reform and opening up, using China's vast market in exchange for the entry of foreign capital and investment from all over the world. In the end, foreign capital made a lot of money, and China also used the money to get rid of the poverty of the past and become a miracle of the world economy. Now China's various loans to Africa for aid and construction are actually the same operation, except that one is active and the other is passive, and our role has also changed from a recipient to an investor. I believe the final result will be the same. We aid in the construction of Africa, and Africa becomes richer and stronger, and we also make money and become stronger. Duan Zi from the Song Dynasty. Recently, there are some lost texts of Yi Jianji, that is, the texts of Yi Jianji scattered in other ancient books. More details, maybe this is the original text. Recipe for tree. Hongji lives in the West Temple of Liang County, and he respects Guanyin very much. The youngest son, Buddha, is sick with phlegm and asthma, which cannot be cured by medicine. If he does not eat or drink milk for 5 days and nights, the syndrome is very dangerous. He also called Dr. Dusheng for a consultation and said, a 3-year-old child is sick like this. Although BNK comes back to life, it's nothing like that. I am in a state of embarrassment, please pray to Avalakai Tesvara. In the middle of the night, the wife dreamed that a woman came in from the back door and said, why don't you take ginseng and walnut soup? Silla ginseng about an inch, and a piece of walnut flesh. If you don't have time to peel it, fry it into a soup. Fill it with a clam shell, and you will stop breathing. Tomorrow, use the soup to peel off the skin of the walnuts, take the meat and take it as medicine, and breathe again. It is just like the rule of law last night, there is a cure for the letter and place. This medicine is not contained in the prescription, and ginseng can relieve asthma, while walnut with skin can restrain the lung. In April, Ding Wei of Chengxi suffered from phlegm disease, and because he met late, he ordered 3 pieces of walnut meat and 3 slices of ginger to be served before lying down. Count, and drink soup, don't move, just go to the pillow. After returning to Yutang, if you are kind, you will respect and respect. Once the cough stops, the phlegm will no longer occur. The same goes for editing. Volume 3 of Yishuo quotes Yi Jian. It is also contained in Volume 14 of Zhi De Jinling Xing, and Yi Jianji's bulletin has no such detailed preparation. Related stories, click to read directly. God tells Fang, God tells Shan Gong Fang Wan Li Erai Yung Hua Shilang Part 1 Brotherly Mendenli Jiao Elixir. Vernacular version. When Hongji lived in the West Temple in Liang County, the place of the same name in present-day Jiangsu, he served Guanyin Bodhisattva very respectfully. His youngest son, Buddha Huo, suffered from phlegm and asthma. Milk, the symptoms are too dangerous. Hong Ji invited Dr. Du to come for a consultation. Du said, "The 3-year-old child is so sick, even if BNK comes back to life, there is nothing to do." The coffin, because his mother had died of a grandson before, made her more distressed and emaciated physically and mentally. Hong Ji also became more distressed and frightened, so he went to the statue of Kuan Yin to mourn and pray for help. That night, his wife dreamed that a woman came into the house through the back door and said to her, "Why don't you drink ginseng and walnut, that is, walnut, soup?" Woke up and said, "This child will definitely live. What you dreamed must be the master Kuan Yin who came to teach us how to do it." Hong Ji hastily took out Silla ginseng, took a walnut more than an inch long, and had no time to peel the walnut. I made soup with ginseng and fed the child a little more of a clam shell, and the child's panting subsided immediately, and then drank some more, and the child fell asleep. On the second day, Hong Ji boiled the walnuts to remove the skin, and then he mixed the clean walnut meat and to make a soup for the child, but the child's asthma broke out again, so Hong Ji still used the method of the first day to fry ginseng walnut soup and give it to the child. After 2 nights, the child's illness will be cured. This medicine was not recorded in the prescription book before, probably because ginseng has the effect of calming asthma, and walnut with skin has the function of restraining lung. I, Hong Mai, also suffered from phlegm disease in April of the year of Xiaozong Chengzi Dinghui, 1187, the 14th year of Chengzi. One night, I met with the Holy One. Emperor Xiaozong saw that I had a phlegm disease, and asked me to eat 3 pieces of walnut meat and 3 slices of ginger. I took it before going to bed, and immediately drank 2 or 3 mouthfuls of hot water, and then chewed 3 pieces of walnut and ginger. 3 tablets, drink some hot water, don't move, just go to the pillow immediately. I went home to the inner hall and took the medicine according to the method instructed by the emperor. In the morning, I stopped coughing and the phlegm did not recur. Hong Ji's treatment are similar to mine. This text is recorded in volume 3 of Yishuo, and the original text is quoted from Yijian Jiji. It is also recorded in volume 14 of Zhida Jinling New Records. Fang does not have a detailed record of this incident. Xiang Hong comments, West Temple in Liang County, known as Guanfa Temple in Song Dynasty, was first built in Tang Dynasty and named Lingling Temple. Coffin, lamentation, supplication, Silla, 57 BC 935, one of the countries in the history of the Korean Peninsula. The capital is located in Jincheng, now Gyeongsangbuk-do, South Korea. Silla ginseng, ginseng from the Silla state, shows that ginseng from the Korean Peninsula had already been used in the Central Plains at that time. Clam sien shells, shells of clam shells or their close relatives, can also be used as medicine. Zinsu, for 2 consecutive nights, there is a joke, the disease is cured. Medical Discourse, a work on medical history, written by Zhang Gao in the Song Dynasty. The book consists of 10 volumes, and it is compiled by extensively collecting documents related to medical figures, allusions, legends, anecdotes, prescriptions, treatments, etc. From various literary and historical works and medical books before the Southern Song Dynasty, worship Kuan Yin devoutly, so it is a story of Kuan Yin induction. In addition, in terms of writing, Hong Ji may have a relationship with Hong Mai. Original author of the vernacular text, Xiang Hong. The whole book of Yijianzi, click to listen for free. "10 years of living in the UK, 5 luck, and 6 climates open a new door." The obedience to victory and defeat in the 5 lucks and 6 G is also the concept of Shenk, and it is still the methodology of seeking the middle way. While reading the Huan I Jing in England, Fan Yingzi encountered the huge threshold of 5 lucks and 6 G. In Fan Yingzi's family, there is an elder who knows how to do arithmetic. When he was a child, he heard this elder tell a little story about how to do arithmetic, and he thought it was amazing. After entering high school, he began to read a lot of easy-to-learn books, but he felt ignorant, as if he couldn't get the point behind a wall. Starting from studying the 5 lucks and 6 Gs, Fan Yingzi felt that another door in his life had been opened. He still remembers the first book he read on the 5 yuns and 6 Gs, which was Detailed Explanation and Application of the 5 yuns and 6 Gs by Kuan Yujing. He counted for me on his fingers, Renyan Kaiu, Yi Shaotai, Tian Helu, and the Jingyu Quanju part of the 5 utilities and 6 G, similar works in the Ming and Qing dynasties that discuss the 5 utilities and 6 qi, he did not let go. Taking care of a disease does not depend on how much it costs. It lies in the accuracy of the dialectic. When Fan Yingzi was studying the 5 yuns and 6 qis, he found that in different eras, different doctors used prescriptions with their own characteristics. He said that since the Ming dynasty, there has been a theory called the decision. In simple terms, it is an explanation of the cyclical changes in external environmental temperature and the consequent cyclical changes in the human body's qi. Fan Yingzi believes that this is the fundamental reason for the differences in theories of various schools of Chinese medicine. In constant thinking, Fan Yingzi realized that the obedience to victory and defeat in the 5 luck and 6 qi also refers to the concept of Shenk. This obedience to victory and defeat is still the methodology of seeking the middle way. Fan Yingzi thought of a case that happened in the fall of that year. There is a classmate in Shenzhen Zhengan College. All 3 children in the family have caught a cold. The symptoms are fever and cough. This classmate took 3 children to see a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, and prescribed a prescription for tonifying yang and relieving the exterior. The medicine cost 1,500 yuan, but the fever did not go away, and the cough did not go away. When he was talking about 5 movements and 6 qi in the class of mental method of traditional Chinese medicine, this classmate shared this prescription for him to analyze. Fan Yingzi felt that this prescription was not suitable for the autumn weather at that time. He prescribed 4 medicines to 3 children, 6 grams of fried gardenia, 6 grams of light tempeh, 2 grams of mint, 30 grams of reed root, 2.2 yuan per dose, and prescribed 2 doses. The 3 children drank these 2 doses of medicine together, and they all recovered soon. His classmate spent a total of 4.4 yuan. Fan Yingzi named this prescription Tang, which is a prescription for the autumn 2015 Shiki group. He said that the 5 luck and 6 qi in the year of Yaiwei in 2015 correspond to the lack of lung gold in the human body, which is more suitable for the treatment of febrile diseases than classic prescriptions. This has been confirmed clinically. Comprehensive consideration of the 3 talents of heaven, earth, and man. Let 1 dose know, 2 doses already is no longer a dream. In the autumn of that year, he consulted many students in the class, adding and subtracting the base formula of Qingjin decoction, such as adding Buplurum, Scutellaria, Jibe, Loquat leaf, and Jiaoxian, and basically healed with 1 or 2 doses of medicine. Mint is cool in nature, Nepeta is flat in nature, and Suya is warm in nature. So before the cold dew, he tends to use mint. During the autumnal equinox, Nepeta. After the autumnal equinox, he tends to use sage leaves. Just like in Beijing in November, the weather is already cold, even if the patient's tongue is red, Fan Yingzi will give priority to using Suye Suzi. He said that seeing a doctor must be combined with the weather, and the sky, the earth, and the people must be considered, so as to conform to the principle of time, place, and people in Sun Tzu's Art of War. What is the core of Chinese medicine? Moderator of the Shangan Forum, the core of Chinese medicine is derived from mathematics and science, and Chinese medicine is not a pure study of imagery. 10 years ago, there was a well-known BBS treatise on febrile diseases forum on the internet, where many young people who love Chinese medicine gathered, studying and discussing the theories of Chinese medicine represented by treatise on febrile diseases day and night. Fan Yingzi used to be the moderator of the Luck edition of the Shangan Forum, and his ID back then was Shank Jinren. This moderator was made by Fan Yingzi in a crooked way. At that time, there was an old man named Li Beizu on the forum, who tried to use Sai Wei Dushu to explain treatise on febrile diseases. He called his theory Zhongjing Fanshu. As soon as his writing came out, many netizens said that this was not the right way to study Shangan theory, and they grouped and attacked the old man, and quickly rose from academic discussions to personal attacks, and the situation was one-sided. However, Fan Yingzi, who was practicing medicine in the UK at the time and also studied diving in the Typhoid Forum in his spare time, felt that this was unfair. Fan Yingzi believes that Li Beizu's article has been carefully thought out, and his thinking is very novel, which can correspond to Shangan prescriptions and spells. So he spent a lot of time studying Li Beizu's writings during his clinical consultation, and then posted some of his own experience in the forum, trying to bring the discussion back to the academic field. As Li Beizu's best, he was also violently besieged. Fan Yingzi was immediately involved in a large number of BBS debates. His spirit of death knocking appeared again. In order to deal with the endless questions and fierce rebuttals, he read all books related to magic in a sweeping style. Accidentally became a moderator. For me, arguing while learning is a very good way of learning. Fan Yingzi laughed when talking about this experience, but the more important thing is that I am constantly studying the process of arithmetic. In the process, it is recognized that the core theory of Chinese medicine is derived from mathematics, and Chinese medicine is not a simple study of imagery. The integration of imagery and art is the way out. Traditional Chinese medicine has a lot of doctors who take images and compare them, but there is a lack of doctors who integrate images and skills. The number of skills is an important part of Chinese medicine. For example, the Xiangxiu of the Eastern Han Dynasty was based on the two systems of Xiang and Shu. Zhang Zhongjing was born in the last years of the Eastern Han Dynasty. When I was studying treatise on febrile diseases, there were always some things that I couldn't understand. Why did Zhongjing say that typhoid fever lasted for 1 or 2 days, 3 or 4 days? Why is this number? Why did Zhongjing say, it's already noon when the Taiyang disease wants to be cured? Why this time? For thousands of years, arithmetic has been an untold secret. When I was in England, I read many books, but my ultimate question was still not solved. Until a few years ago, a chance to learn by chance, I finally completely solved all the problems of the technique. Fan Yingzi felt that the structure of his entire theoretical system became clearer. In the course of 10 years of study and consultation in the UK, through many online learning exchanges such as the Treatise Forum, Fan Yingzi has increasingly discovered that the various hurdles he stumbled into in the process of learning Chinese medicine are also the problems of many young doctors, and the confusion that Chinese medicine lovers will experience. He realized that, first, the current education system of Chinese medicine does not have a good inheritance. Second, no one has put much effort into studying how to be a teacher. It is a secret that is not passed on, and the theoretical system is not complete after all in the clinical practice of traditional Chinese medicine without combining spells. At the same time, in the process of clinical treatment, Fan Yingzi became more and more convinced that what doctors can cure is mainly the physical body formed by the aura of heaven and earth. But human emotions are the root of problems in the flesh. In many cases, doctors try their best, but they can't influence and guide patients' negative emotions. A doctor who can see a doctor may not be able to treat a sick person. So, who should solve this problem? His teacher. The real good Chinese medicine doctor should be himself. Fan Yingzi said that the real good Chinese medicine practitioner should be himself. Every patient should, under the guidance of the teacher, awaken his own positive emotional mechanism. A patient with a positive emotional mechanism is often easier to treat. A student who studies and analyzes the structure of TCM prescriptions not only learns the curative effect of the prescriptions, but also learns how not to get caught up in the details, but to view the world as a whole. When a person can look at the world, gains and losses, sorrows and joys with a holistic view, his emotional mechanism will be more conducive to the doctor's treatment. Fan Yingzi gradually felt that he should be a teacher. A teacher can help more people than a doctor. A flash of thought shook the 10 directions. At the end of 2011, Fan Yingzi's lease contract for the clinic expired. He could have found a new venue to open the clinic and live a stable and well-paid doctor's life in the UK. But at that point in time, some domestic friends invited him to return to China to teach lectures on treatise on febrile disease. So he made a quick decision, to leave England and return to China to teach Chinese medicine. Let go of all life in the UK, just leave. After returning to China, in my lectures, I used the idea of seeking the middle way to combine the thought of treating febrile disease with the prescription for febrile disease. Frankly speaking, when I was practicing medicine in the UK, I believed that treatise on febrile diseases and classical prescriptions could solve all problems. Although I read many books on febrile diseases and used some prescriptions for febrile diseases, my understanding of febrile diseases is still not a system. It wasn't until I really thought about the Shanghan Lunjing Fang system that the febrile disease system was established in my mind. Fan Yingzi said while looking for the febrile disease folder in Ancient Chinese medicine will not die. In the inheritance, the fire continues. After returning to China, Fan Yingzi began to lecture on traditional Chinese medicine classics such as treatise on febrile diseases and miscellaneous diseases and Fu Xingzhi to students. In the process of continuous lectures, he also constantly sorted out his understanding of the theoretical system of Shangan. In clinical practice, Fan Yingzi sometimes uses prescriptions for febrile diseases, and the treatment effect is better than classic prescriptions. However, the prescriptions for febrile diseases are usually very large, with many medicinal flavors, and the structure is not as clear as that of classical prescriptions. When Fan Yingzi was talking about Fu Xingju, he suddenly realized that he should sort out the structure of the warm disease prescription. In constant comparison and summarization, Fan Yingzi slowly combined the structure of Shangan and Wenbing Fang. For example, he used some commonly used medicines of febrile diseases, such as Nepeta and Perilla leaves, to form the effect of ephedra in the classic prescription. This is just a little bit of analysis and clinical trials. He said that when he uses the prescription for febrile disease, he is very clear in his heart that this prescription is solving the Shangan Classics prescription Taiyang, Yangming, Xiaoyang, Taidian, Shaiyan, Zhuiyan. Layer problem. Fan Yingzi admired Mr. Zhao Shaoqin, and he believed that Mr. Zhao Shaoqin was a master of febrile diseases. Zhao Shaoqin's combing of the concept of defense Qi and blood, the summary of floating, middle, pressing, sinking and outside the pulse, inside the pulse of pulse diagnosis, and the application of the thought of diagnosing Qi and Qi, that's a master, the master of. He plans to teach Zhao Shaoqin's selected clinical cases to students next year. He hoped that the students would understand the ideas of masters like Mr. Zhao Shaoqin, and also experience the effects of Chinese medicine in treating diseases for themselves, so as to have a real sense of trust in Chinese medicine. I asked him, what is the greatest sense of accomplishment after being a teacher for so many years? According to my understanding, we can talk about pure ancient TCM thinking, and practice the ability to solve clinical problems independently with pure TCM thinking without the support of Western medicine. Fan Yingzi is very firm about this. He said that the success of Chinese medicine must be possible in a pure Chinese medicine environment. Huangbi Niajing, Treatise on Febrile Diseases, Shennong's Materia Medica, Fu Xingju, Nanjing, Benefits of Febrile Diseases and Shushu are all the best ways to learn pure Chinese medicine. Even if his students don't want to become doctors of Chinese medicine, he wants them to understand that everyone's body and mind can be understood and coordinated. For example, according to your own physique, adjust your physical condition in accordance with the 24 solar terms. For example, let students understand the middle way theory, and let students look at problems in life that they originally thought were entangled from a larger picture. Teacher Fan said that after resonating with his students in terms of values, students can establish a positive emotional mechanism, and then adjust their physical conditions, often with twice the result with half the effort. Hearing this, I asked him, have you ever considered that your non-academic teaching method can really cultivate a group of Chinese medicine doctors who adhere to classicism from among Chinese medicine enthusiasts? Fan Yingzi did not answer my question directly. He asked me, even if a sage is like Confucius, how many of his disciples have achieved more than Confucius? The important thing is that the students of Confucius established a set of Confucian thought system, which is the inheritance. I think we are now in a state of disconnection. Several generations have been disconnected. What we can do now is to let these fans who are willing to learn about classical Chinese medicine, and subtly pass it on to their children. I don't expect a generation the connection with ancient times can be re-established, and what our generation can do is to pass it on. Fan Yingzi said solemnly. Let's write about the Russo-Ukraine war today, because Russia finally won the strategic city of Bakhmut. On May 20th, Prigozhin, the founder of the Russian Wagner mercenary group, announced that he had completely controlled Bakhmut. Let's write about the Russo-Ukraine war today. On May 21st, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that the Russian private military group Wagner had completely controlled Donetsk Bakhmut after launching an offensive with the support of the artillery and aviation units of the South Army Group Army, a special Russian military operation against Ukraine. Special area. Putin then sent congratulations, and the Kremlin announced, all outstanding performers will receive state awards. The outstanding ones will be rewarded by the state, which shows the importance of Bakhmut. It can be said that this is the second major strategic victory Russia has achieved since the outbreak of the Russo-Ukraine War. The first major strategic victory was the occupation of Mariupol. No matter how many times you win, you can't shake the opponent's foundation. This is called tactical victory. No matter how many times you lose, you can shake the opponent's foundation as long as you win once. This is called strategic victory. Since the outbreak of the Russo-Ukraine War, Russia and Ukraine have fought at the tactical level for most of the time, and each has won or lost, but those are irrelevant to the overall situation. There are actually only two wars that can really change the situation, the Mariupol War and the Bakhmut War. The Mariupol War completely opened up the southern channel of Russia, connecting the Donbas region with Zaporozhye, Kherson, and Crimea. Russian personnel, weapons, equipment, and materials can be directly and quickly transported by land, otherwise Russia can only transport through the Black Sea, so whether it is transportation efficiency or safety guarantee, it is far inferior to land transportation. Land transportation has strong mobility, several vehicles can also transport materials, dispersed transportation, strong concealment, and even if it is attacked, it will not suffer much loss. However, shipping by sea is different. Not only must the volume of transportation be large, but it is also difficult to escape the tracking of European and American spy satellites, and it is easy to be targeted and attacked. Russia's first important strategic victory was to take Mariupol. After taking Mariupol, the security of Crimea, Kherson, and Zaporozhye was guaranteed. Bakhmut is also an extremely important strategic location. It is an important hub for electricity, roads, and railways in the Yudong region. Connecting major cities without Bakhmut, the Ukrainian army will lose its ability to supply the surrounding areas. The eastern defense line will fall into a passive state. Below we briefly illustrate the importance of Bakhmut for you. Since Bakhmut is an important transportation hub, once the Russian army occupies it, it can attack in all directions. There are three main attack routes. Article 1, attack Seversk to the north. Once Seversk is captured, Bilogorivka will be surrounded. Article 2, attack Slavyansk to the northwest. Once Slavyansk and Seversk are captured, Hunglyman will be surrounded. The third is to attack Konstantin-Rovka to the southwest. Once Konstantin-Rovka is taken, Dzerzhinsk will not be able to keep it. Do you see the problem? After taking down Bakhmut, as long as the Russian army captures the three red-circled cities, the other cities will not need to be attacked, and they will be self-defeating. However, if the Russian army does not capture Bakhmut, then the Ukrainian army can transport troops, weapons, and supplies to various cities through an important hub like Bakhmut, and the Russian army will have to pay a very high price for any attack. After the Russian army occupied Bakhmut, there were three main directions of attack. Do you know which one the Russian army will attack first? Of course you don't know, because the Russian army can change the course of war at any time. If you deploy a large number of troops in Konstantin-Rovka, I will fight Seversk or Slavyansk. If you focus on defense in Slavyansk, I will fight Konstantin-Rovka or Seversk. Under such circumstances, the Ukrainian army fell into extreme passivity, and the limited force could not cover everything. Bakhmut is so important, but it was still captured by the Russian army, and the other three directions that the Russian army wants to attack must be easier to fight than Bakhmut, so it is definitely not a big problem for the Russian army to win this area. Once this large area is won, it means that Russia has completely controlled the entire Donbas region. Anyone know what this means? In 2014, Crimea became independent from Ukraine, and then Luhansk and Donetsk also declared their independence. Crimea was taken away by Russia, and Ukraine did not dare to fight at that time. However, Russia at that time only recognized the independence of Lugansk and Donetsk, and did not directly intervene in the military, but only supported these two states behind the scenes. Therefore, in order to regain these two states, Ukraine deployed a large number of troops, weapons, and strong defenses built. It can be said that in the whole of Ukraine, except for the capital Kiev, the most difficult places to fight are Luhansk and Donetsk, because the Ukrainian army has been deployed there for 8 years with the support of Europe and the United States. After the outbreak of the Russo-Ukraine War, the Russian army successfully captured the Kherson Oblast and the Zaporozhye region. Did you see any fierce battles there? That's why. Let me tell you a question that few people pay attention to: what is the main force of the Russian army doing? If we carefully observe the entire battle situation, we will find a very serious problem: the main force of the Russian army disappeared. Lugansk was not brought down by the Russian army, but by the local armed forces in Luhansk. The Russian army only provided weapons and equipment for flank support. Mariupol was brought down by Chechnya, and the Russian army still provided weapons, equipment, and support. Supporting on the flank, Bakhmut was not shot down by the Russian army, but by Wagner's mercenaries, and the Russian army still did not move. Whether it is the Luhansk armed forces or the Chechen armed forces, They are not the central army, but local armed forces. Wagner is not even considered a local armed force, but a mercenary army. Why let local armed forces and mercenaries play the main role? What is the main force of the Russian army doing? At the beginning of the war, the Russian army had more than 100,000 troops in Ukraine, and later Putin mobilized another 200,000, adding up to at least 300,000. What are those people doing? There are two possibilities. The first one is that Russia is afraid of the expansion of local armed forces, so it wants to take advantage of the Russo-Ukrainian war to weaken the strength of local armed forces, let local armed forces first, and let them be cannon fodder. This practice is very common in history. The second type is that there is a strict division of labor within the Russian army. Each faction is responsible for taking down a strategic location. After completing the task, you don't need to participate in the main battlefield. You just need to defend in the rear. Which is it? Obviously the second one. The main ethnic group in Russia is the Russian ethnic group, but besides the Russian ethnic group, there are many ethnic groups, and many ethnic groups are autonomous. There are 21 autonomous republics in Russia. The so-called self-government is actually equivalent to an independent country, but they have no foreign powers such as foreign affairs and national defense, and they are completely independent internally. They have their own presidents, parliaments, and constitutions. That is, while Russia has 21 autonomous republics, none of them has an army. Therefore, there is no warlord separatism situation. Speaking of this, some people may have questions. Why does Chechnya have an army? It was formed temporarily. After the outbreak of the Russo-Ukraine War, Russia's military strength was insufficient, so the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation agreed to form a new federal armed force, Chechen Army, in Chechnya, mainly composed of Chechens. Putin must have given Chechnya a lot of benefits. There is no warlord separatism, so naturally there is no need to let them be cannon fodder. There must be various factions within the Russian army, and it must be very complicated. Russia originally had 6 major military regions, and later synthesized 4 major military regions, plus a northern fleet. Obviously, the soldiers in each military region must be recruited within the area under its jurisdiction, so the commander of the military region must definitely consider the interests of the region. Let others fight the first battle, and let others fight the difficult ones. Against such a background, Putin must balance the forces of all parties, otherwise everyone will work without effort and will not be able to form a fighting force. Against this background, Putin can only let the most combative troops be models first. Chechnya is quite sturdy, so let it gnaw the first difficult bone, the Nazi Azov battalion in Mariupol. Wagner is a mercenary, all criminals recruited from the prison. They will inevitably fight desperately in order to make a contribution to the crime, so they gnawed on the second difficult bone, vomit. After the victory of Chechnya and Wagner, the future battlefield has nothing to do with them, and they no longer need to charge into battle. This is the main reason we see Chechnya disappear after the end of the Mariupol war. If I were Putin, I would definitely do this. Russia's original 6 military regions, each military region is responsible for gnawing a difficult bone, and whoever gnaws it down will be rewarded, and there is no need to lead the battle later. However, if anyone fails to fight down, not only will they be punished, but they will also have to charge at the front line until they are all killed or win. Only in this way can the Russian army exert its maximum combat power and balance the forces of all parties. Why did the main force of the Russian army disappear on the battlefield? And here's the answer: it's not their turn yet. There is no doubt that the stronger the military region is, the more difficult it is to assign. The Western military region mainly defends against NATO, so its strength must be the strongest, followed by the Eastern military region, because it is responsible for defending against Japan, South Korea, and of course China, and then the Southern military region, which is mainly aimed at Georgia and China. The Middle East, the last, is the Central military region, which has almost no enemy to guard against, and it is in the middle, so it mainly supports other military regions and protects nuclear weapons, etc. According to Russia's strategic goals, Russia wants to take back all the land sent by Khrushchev and Lenin, so there must be several tough battles to be fought next. In June 2022, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that the goals of the third phase of special military operations against Ukraine include controlling Nikolaev, Odessa, and Kharkov states. Nikolaev is relatively easy to fight, but Odessa and Kharkov are more difficult to fight. Odessa is the 4th largest city in Ukraine, it is a port city, and the underground defense is very strong. Kharkov is the second largest city in Ukraine, with a very developed industry, and many military enterprises are located there. Obviously, Kharkov is the most important. As long as Kharkov is taken, the entire eastern part of Ukraine will basically be unable to resist Russia. The east and west of Ukraine are separated by the Dnieper River. As long as Russia takes Kharkov, other places will be easy to fight. As long as all the bridges on the Dnieper River are blown up, all the weapons Ukraine has obtained from Europe, equipment, etc., it is difficult to enter the east. At that time, Russia relied on the defense of the Dnieper River, and the Ukrainian army was powerless. On the contrary, if Russia hits Nikolov or Odessa first, then as long as the Ukrainian army blows up the bridge on the Dnieper River, there will be serious problems with the supply of the Russian army. Based on the above analysis, I think that Russia's main force is preparing to attack Kharkov. At present, the strategy of the Russian army may be, use local armed forces, mercenaries, or weak theaters to attack some relatively difficult cities, and hand them over to the Russian army. Step by step, steadily and steadily, laying down a piece, and thoroughly digesting a piece, there must be no turmoil in the rear during a major war. A real war is brewing. This war is not only related to the fate of Russia, but also to changes in the political structure of the entire world. Russia cannot afford to lose.